Joana lives in a poor neighborhood in a small town in São Paulo. 2 years ago, she got really sick. She started bleeding. She walked for 40 minutes, took 2 buses to reach a public hospital. When she got there, she was not medicated because they had ran out of supplies that day. She had to come back twice just to be seen by a doctor. And after all that ordeal, she didn't get to schedule a badly needed colonoscopy. Joana is not alone. There are around 140 million people in Brazil who rely exclusively in the public health system. And when they have to schedule a procedure, it can take anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. This year, when Joana got sick, she walked to a nearby mobile health clinic. She got immediate treatment and first world care. The colonoscopy identified a cancer that the doctors were able to remove. So today, she lives symptom-free. What changed since 2 years ago? The government is still the same. The public health system is still the same. And as in any big bureaucracy, it does things the way it always does things, in a predefined fashion, whether that solves the problem or not. In Joana's case, it did not solve the problem. NGOs are already there, but they have limited budget and capacity to provide free treatment. Colonoscopy is not a new treatment. Doctors had performed it for decades now. And there are philanthropists with motivation and resources, but without an effective organization on the ground, very little changes. The big change was adding an intermediary to the equation to get all these players to work together. In this case, SITAWI was a financial intermediary that got a loan from a philanthropist, got a grant from a philanthropist, turned that into a below-market loan for an NGO that repurposed a truck into a mobile health clinic. They contracted with the government. The government would pay for the procedure, but would not pay for the remodeling of the truck. And that was just enough to help Joana. They repaid the loan, and the cycle restarted in another place. New truck, new mobile health clinic, new health services. If you have never tried to take a loan in Brazil, picture this. If you go to a bank and you deposit 100,000 reais, the bank might lend you 60,000 at 25 or even 35% per year. In our case, for comparison, we lend at a third to a half of that. And banks don't even want to open checking accounts for nonprofits. In our case, we welcome nonprofit and social enterprises. So I started SITAWI to change the way we finance social impact in Brazil. We work under the motto, Finance for Good. Finance for Good means more capital, more types of capital, and more efficient use and allocation of capital to transform more lives. This idea started about 6 years ago when I was working at a very well-known strategic consulting firm, and a friend of mine asked whether I would take a hypothetical position at the Clinton Foundation. Without thinking, I said yes. And that startled me. Not the yes, but the without thinking part. Because that meant there was something very clear to my soul that my brain was not picking up on. So I started to think about the key professional events that I have been in and who I was with and what was I feeling. And I remember 3 events. I remember talking to the CEO of a large multinational about a highly profitable investment plan. And I remember that I was happy then. I remember discussing with a panel that included a Nobel Prize winner strategies for increasing productivity in a sector in the country. I remember feeling proud that day. But I also remembered an opportunity I had to help a social entrepreneur with her challenges. That made me a better person. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine going to work every day and coming back a better person? So that's an unbeatable job description. And that also made me think on how we can think about, say, your next job decision. Don't focus so much on what's the work or what's the pay. Yes, those are important questions, but the real deal makers or deal breakers is if you ask yourself, is this going to get me closer to who I want to be? So I started SITAWI 6 years ago, and today we do 4 things. We turn grants into social loans for nonprofits and social enterprises. Social loans are packets of 50,000 to 200,000 reais at below market interest rates with strategic advice. So in the example I gave, the name of the organization is called CS, and they do a fantastic job in the health system. 2, we manage social funds for large donors. For example, we help a group of 20 multinationals to execute a joint corporate social responsibility initiative. And we also help a family that wanted to put relevant resources to work in the social space, but they figured out that they did not have to start their own foundation with their own name. They wanted the impact. So, and actually, that fund provided the resources for the loan that helped Joanna. 3, we help financial institutions. We consulted them, helping them integrate social and environmental considerations in their investment decisions. Here we're talking about for-profit investors putting for-profit money with hedge funds or banks into for-profit companies, but doing that with an investing lens that highlights good social and environmental practices. And finally, number 4, we publish research and studies, such as the last one we did that was on nonprofit mergers that we released about a month ago. And what has changed since then? Well, we have placed 3.2 million reais to work in 20 initiatives, 15 of which loans, that impacted over 140,000 people with income-generating opportunities, with health services, or education. I'll tell you one story about one of those 140,000 people. I remember 3 years ago, SITAWI had hit a rough spot, and I was thinking about quitting. And one of those people told me, I used to have panic attacks. I used not to be able to leave my home. Now I come every day to this community arts project. This was a project ran by one of the social services organizations that we financed. And she continued, before, I wasn't happy. Now I am. So needless to say, that gave me the renewed energy to lead SITAWI to where we are now. So we also do it in a very efficient way. For every R$1 that we use in grants for operations, we allocate R$4 in the social space, and we still have another R$3 to allocate towards social and environmental initiatives as loans or as grants or as other support for this type of initiatives. Now, the key question is, how do we increase these numbers? How do we increase the social impact? How to go from one flower to a sea of flowers? And, well, we have 2 basic choices. We can either wait for the government to solve all our problems, or we can wait for the market to solve all our problems. But I don't really believe any of those will happen. What I truly believe is that if we want to build a better society, we have to take action. And that can be done in several ways. That can be done with your time, that can be done with your skills, and that can be done with your resources. So here I'm talking about giving. And I want to focus on giving, not because it's more important than the other ones, but because, as people say, the pocket is the most sensitive part of the human body, right? And in Brazil, in our culture, it's very uncomfortable to talk about that. And that's what we need to change. And also because our legal framework, although it's not fantastic, it's also not terrible. Government can contract with NGOs, NGOs can raise money from Brazil and abroad, and they can even get a loan. I'll tell you a quick version of how we can solve this problem without doing any work. All of you, or most of you, will have kids. I just had a daughter. The way we can solve the problem without doing any work is if when we start giving them an allowance, we divide it in 3 envelopes. We divide it into money to spend, money to save, and money to give. If we do that with our children, all we have to do is wait. When they grow up, they'll solve all our problems. Now, if you don't really think it's fair or reasonable to expect our unborn children to solve all our problems, we probably have to do something ourselves. Probably this generation has something to contribute. But just in case, don't forget, 3 envelopes. 1 to spend, 1 to save, 1 to give. So I'll do this quick experiment here. I'll ask for all of you who have given more than 4% of your income last year to stand up. So add all the money you made during the year, your salaries, your bonuses, your 13º, multiply that by 4%, and now add everything you gave to nonprofits and to causes last year. If what you gave is more than 4%, please stand up. Don't be shy, stand up. I see a couple of people standing up. Those of you who are still doing the math, that brother-in-law who always asks for money, he's not a cause. He doesn't count. Okay. I'll make it a little bit easier so more people can participate. Let's put the benchmark at 2%. So if what you gave last year times 2%, if what you made last year times 2%, you ended up giving more than that, please stand up. All of you who had stood up at 4%, if your math is correct, continue standing up. Okay. So we got some, I don't know, 15% of the audience, more or less. Don't sit yet. Now, remain standing up only those of you who have told more than 5 people personally about that donation. Not Twitter, not Facebook, but personally. So all of you who have talked about this philanthropic donations to more than 5 people, remain standing up. Okay, so that's about half. Now we're back to 5%. Okay, good, thank you. You can sit for now. We'll do more of that later. The reasons I hear in Brazil not to give, in my opinion, they end up covering either excuses or lack of willing to engage. So people say, there's no NGO I trust. So that's one is easy to solve. Go and visit an NGO, talk to the CEO, talk to the staff, talk to the beneficiaries. You'll find one you can trust. So that's solved. Oh, some people say, well, but I don't have time for that. That's easy again. There are plenty of nonprofit platforms for giving that have done some level of pre-screening and vetting. So for smaller amounts, you can use them. For larger amounts, you can use organizations like ours. That's a solution for that as well. People say, well, but there's not enough fiscal incentive to give. Well, we do a bunch of stuff in our life without fiscal incentives, and we still do it. It's not that I'm against fiscal incentives. Don't take me wrong. It's just that that is a more reasonable argument if you have already done everything you can without fiscal incentives. So that's not the reason either. And finally, some people say, well, I don't have money. Now, think about everything you did last year. All the important stuff you did last year. You got married, you changed your car, you went on that vacation that you were talking for so long. Now, think about those important things. Would you have not done any of those by December if you had given 100 reais to a nonprofit in January, or 1,000 reais, or for some 10,000 reais? For everyone here in this room, there is a number that can be your philanthropic budget. Doesn't have to be high, doesn't have to be low, but there is that number. You should start. Don't worry so much about what the budget is. Because once you start and you identify what moves you, and you identify causes that you care for, the budget will adjust. It will adjust to what it should be. So now let's make another experiment. All those of you who think that we can change and that we should change the giving culture in Brazil, please stand up. If you think we're already doing everything we can, if you think we as society, we're fine, nothing to change, that's okay, you can remain seated. But if you believe that we can do better and we should do better, stand up. Okay, that's much better. Now, I'm standing up here and I was able to help Joana. Imagine how many Joanas and Marias and Pedros, all of you standing up in the audience, could help. So let's build a better society. Let's build a society in which we support nonprofits and causes that we like, and that we talk about it, and we do it frequently, because that's the way we change culture. We do stuff, and we talk about it. We have dreams, and we talk about them in the morning. We go to work, and we talk about what happened in the office at night. So to build this society, we want to propose that people who don't already give, that they give. That people who already give, that they give more, and that they give better, and that they talk about it frequently. You can visit www.doemais.doemelhor.org.br, www.givemoregivebetter.org.br, and tell your story, and get inspired by other people's stories, and help us build a better country together. Thank you.